it comes down to something simple like how do you greet a customer whenever you come to their house? How are you positioning yourself within the home? And I don't mean like the physical space. It can't go down to that, but just the way that you're offering solutions. Are you offering solutions? Those are the things that it's like, okay, hey, there's not a software ad that's going to do that. There's not adding more people doesn't solve that problem. It's are you doing those things that the industry has said, hey, these lead to success.
Welcome to Blue Collar Bros, a home service podcast dedicated to discovering what differentiates the best of the best within the home service industry. We are your hosts, the Yarbrough brothers, or your bros. We have Will, Kolby, and our producer Bryce, as always, is with us. And I'm Tucker. Guys, let's dive into it.
Good morning.
So,
about Mr. Self
today,
it's about Mr. Self there.
So today we're going to talk about kind of what the changing landscape, not for the industry, we've touched a lot on the industry, but the changing landscape of what we're going through at Yarbrough & Sons, how we're adopting, how we're adapting, what implementation looks like for us, how we can, one, share our woes, because I think a lot of times we live in a space where it's, kind of glorified that it's like, oh yeah, you just go do it. And it's like, well, how? So talk about some of the roadblocks and speed bumps we've hit along the way of trying to figure out what is going to work best for us. Touch on what kind of new sales process is looking like. Touch on some marketing stuff that we're doing, and then we're going to wrap up with some doomsday questions. How we're looking to if we hit turbulent waters in 2025, how we will correct, how we'll make sure the ship stays afloat, stays on course, and we continue to hit budget. So I think to start, one of the big things we've been tackling that's affecting you guys specifically, Will and Cole, is the residential sales process. So if you guys could kind of just like dive into what we were doing and where we would like to go this year, where we'd like to be by the end of this year.
I think this every year, especially at the start of the year, I always look back at like what was where did I get kicked in the teeth, and how can I not do that again? And so I think the sales process for us, we're working on putting sales within our within our SRM or CRM, both, yeah.
Within Service Titan.
So many acronyms.
We use Service Titan. Trying to put everything in Service
Yes,
Titan.
thank you. Yeah. I'm still waking up this morning.
It's very early.
It is early. And so the sales process is always changing right now. We just added a new salesman to the team this past the fourth quarter in 2024, and implementing a lot of the sales process and the know-how that we have and whatnot, and seeing his success at the end of the year and then start at the first of the year. And so that's been kind of fun. And so the sales process for us is kind of ever changing at the moment. We're looking to drive efficiency. And figure out ways that we can do better than what we have done in the past.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think too. I mean, you've done a ton of work on it, especially on the software side. So I've done less on that, but I've been more of the implementation guinea pig.
Yes.
In some ways, Jacob really has too. I mean, him coming in not knowing anything,
yes.
And then. But my perspective from transitioning from one sales process to a different one, it just keeps everything in the same house. I think that's what we had too many pieces of tech or softwares that didn't talk to each other, that we ourselves were trying to create workarounds to talk to each other. And then, it's all trying to bring it all under one roof so that we can really track what we're doing, how we're doing it, how information is flowing from one department to the next department, and how that influences other adjacent departments. And so I think that's, from my perspective, that's been a pretty big deal. Now I have not been as closely integrated into the software side of the change, but that's just my perspective and its utilization.
Yeah, that we kind of had up until the fourth quarter, we really kind of had a sales process, which was you're kind of doing your own thing. We're doing, the sales we had all successful, but they were all different. And our world of trying to drive efficiency, we needed to do things that were scalable and teachable.
It needs to be predictable.
It needs to be predictable. And so we needed to kind of narrow down our processes on the sales process, especially going into the fourth quarter, so that way we can coach Jacob the route, the route to success and what that looks like, and and so we called it the Yarbrough way, and that was really, really successful, and he saw a ton of success this past year, for example, on the fourth quarter. So he took all my leads, and so I trusted him with all my potential leads, just so he would have something to do. That allowed for me to do a ton of work on the software side of things, and kind of work on that end. And so he actually rose my average ticket, which was really cool to see. And so my close rate stayed the same. And so I was pretty pumped to see that success. My average ticket was sitting just around 14, and it rose to like 14.6, I think, towards the end of the year, almost up to 15. His average ticket, if you just took his sales, his isolated sales, his average ticket was it like 16? Yeah. 16, 17. Okay, which is awesome.
And so close percent was in the low 40s.
Right. Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah. And so
not bad at all.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we run into and are becoming more and more just aware of as time goes on is, we've said it before on the podcast, but it's like the systems that got us to 10 won't get us to 20. But I think being confronted with the reality that our systems that even got us here might have to be stripped down. Like we might have to blow some things up in order to rebuild and kind of build back a stronger foundation for certain processes. Because, like Will was saying, like we've had so many pieces of software bloat. Because that's the thing with like the software as a service industry, the SaaS industry. They create some really cool products. I loathe them with about all of my being, but they create some neat products. But the problem is, a lot of times, for contractors, everyone is doing something a little bit differently. It's just like doing an install. There's, we can't just cookie cut a sales process or a sales system because, well, this house, we have tolerances that we have to adjust for. We have clearances we have to adjust for. Well, this one needs this ductwork and this refrigerant line. Right. Well, this one doesn't. Right. And so there's so many different variables of input that go into completing an install. The same thing is true for software adoption in the trades. Every company has just a little bit different process rocking and rolling. Whereas SaaS, a lot of times, is looking at the top 2, 3, 4, 5 successful companies in the space who are pretty much doing it similarly, and then they create a environment that isn't super flexible to anyone else. So, like in the case of ServiceTitan, it's I've said it before. Which is they give you the keys to a rocket ship, but only ever train you how to drive a tricycle. And they were focused on scaling as opposed to making sure that their success managers were in a place to be successful. And so it's easy to outsmart simple. It's easy to add and continue adding and continue adding. But then what you end up with is a bunch of monthly payments where you don't know where crap's going. You have software that won't communicate with each other. So now you've arbitrarily created a whole bunch of double entry in the entire accounting and sales side of things. Whereas I think what we're coming to over the last 4 or 5 months is the recognition that the way forward, though it's the harder path to figure out how to make this thing work. The way forward is pulling everything in one house so that we can have clear reports on outgoing estimates, on open estimates, won and lost jobs, how much is the average ticket, what's total revenue. Because from my chair doing CFO stuff, my goal is by the end of this next year that we don't have anyone else in QuickBooks except for me and our financial controller, and that's it. To reduce the number of people who have access to, one, sensitive information, but two, potential information where data entry error or just lag of entry can happen. Whereas if everything is occurring at the top level of our CRM or whatever it is, if it's ServiceTitan or Sarah or whatever, it doesn't particularly matter the software that we code it with, but make sure that all the financial data is being put in on the top line of where a customer's journey begins with us so that it can then funnel down properly, as opposed to having to create so many steps of either workarounds or double entry. And I think that's been a hard battle because, one,
it's a hard pill to swallow because you're staring at a software that has limitations. and
perceived limitations.
Perceived limitations in which it won't do the things that
we want it to do.
That we want it to do.
Yeah.
It can do just about everything that you need that in a business, an HVAC business, you need it to be. There's a ton of smart people that have worked on this thing, but oftentimes as a contractor, you don't know what you don't know, and you're trying to fit a
Square peg
in a round hole, and my world in the past, on the fourth quarter was just basically tinkering with, in this case, Service Titan, and finding what the limitations were. And whenever I found a limitation, the result is, that's the ego would say, that's a dumb limitation, I'll just work around it. Just take a step back, and you're like, all right, well, I'm not going to make a workaround because that's not scalable. So what does it allow for me to do in a way that is functional for our business? And so that was a big pill to swallow for us kind of towards the end of the year, is recognizing we've got to use it the way that it's been built.
Sidebar on the square peg round hole situation.
Yeah.
Did you guys not just put everything through the square hole? The round peg fits through it. The triangle fits through it. The hexagon fits through. Everything is a square.
Everything goes.
I want to jump in and say that, typically this is January. It's the first month of the year. And this is that time of year where we start looking more at recruitment efforts or kind of lining up our team for the year.
Right.
And I think that's always a really... I'm realizing now that is a huge opportunity to nail your process, because whenever you are... you have the pressure of bringing in a new sales guy or bringing in a new maintenance technician or trouble technician.
Right.
You come to terms with you get to reflect on what does our process look like right now? Yeah. How do I onboard this guy? How do I make sure that he is set up for success to do the thing correctly? And it's kind of it offers a little bit of that uncomfortable reflection to be like, we don't have a good system for this.
Yeah.
We've been running and gunning this whole time. We've been doing it this way for the last 4 years. So I think that's a really cool time whenever you are looking at recruitment and hiring someone. You want to make sure that you do take that time to make sure your process is nailed so that this guy can have a great year. And I think you're seeing that in real time. I think we're experiencing that in real time because we're not experts at this. But I think bringing in Jacob at the time that we did kind of made us get more serious about centralizing what our sales team does, to make sure that our process is consistent across the board. Because what you were saying, in the past, it hasn't really been that way. Each of you kind of operated at your own pace and did what you needed to do to get the job done. And so I think it's a cool opportunity whenever you're bringing someone new in to be able to nail those processes.
Yeah. And see the fruit of what happens when you invest in your team at the start and teach them everything, teach them in our circumstance, the Yarbrough way.
Yeah.
And what happens. And the result of that is success. There's a reason you're in business. There's a reason you are successful on the field. It's like, okay, well, write it down, figure it out, make that a process, and then teach it to the next guy that you're trying to bring up. And so, yeah.
And in real time, you're figuring out the McDonald'sification of the home service process, because we have this notion of run and gun, that there's a thousand ways to skin the cat and do the job, and that's true. But whenever you have 54 people running around, you've got 40 trucks on the road, you've got so many variables. It's on us to figure out how can we make the process as predictable as possible. And in that, it's easy to feel like, coming from we're still family owned, we're still mom and pop, I would classify, but coming from the mom and pop shop where it's not very many people running around to now 50 plus and growing, the whole game has to be duplicable. And in order to make it such, we have to have systems in place, but we have to build those systems. There isn't just a manual that we can go buy. We have to build it. And so not only are we doing the work of building the manual and figuring out what is the SOP here, what's the standard operating procedure that we want done, but also how do we then turn around and implement it? And that's been a really interesting transition to see all of us go through, which is we have to be comfortable living in the tension with our team. Just because I'm calling you to task on this thing, it's not a personal indictment on who you are. Rather, it's, hey, why didn't this thing happen? And so it's kind of the corporatization of the company is, we're seeing it in real time, and not that that's a bad thing. I think a lot of times out in the job market and the labor force, that is perceived as a bad thing. But I think there's a means by which you can maintain culture while still implementing a more structured organization that is able to run more efficiently and predictable than otherwise.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we're learning is introducing like we try to run with full transparency with our team, but also one faucet that we don't open maybe enough would be that of accountability for our team for when they don't do the thing that we need them that needs to be done, and so just working trying to figure out the balance of providing that accountability for our team, so that way they at the end of the day they see as much success as possible. And so because there's a reason why you ask your guys to do certain things, and maybe it's sometimes maybe it's not communicated as to why the thing needs to be done, and when that is communicated well, and then you provide accountability, you want to be the best coach to your team as possible, and sometimes that comes in the form of, hey, we didn't do what we were supposed to be doing. Let's fix this. How can we do better? And so and sometimes I think that's a hard conversation, because people I would probably consider myself a perfectionist. I like to tinker with my process and make it as best as I know I possibly can be. And so whenever someone tells me to change it, I'm like, I dig in my heels. And so, and I think a lot of our guys are very similar.
To clarify, your perfectionist is also a massive creative.
Yes.
So it has to be your process.
I know. Yes. Yeah. And so, hey, I've come a long way. And so, not to say that it was I think a lot of our guys are very similar, maybe not to the extent that I am, whereas they have a process that they know to follow and that they know where it works.
Yeah. They have found success in.
Yep. And so when we are asking them to change those things, I think the natural inclination is to dig in your heels and be like, well, why? Or may not, they may not see the big picture as to why we're asking them to do the things that we want them to do. And so I think for us is, with that transparency, working to try to provide accountability in such a way that that fosters friendship, that fosters growth not only within the company but growth for that individual. Because I would want you guys to look me in the face and say, hey, Kolby, we're messing up here. We need to address this. And it takes leaving your ego at the door and your hands being open to changing the way that you're doing things. And that's a hard thing to do. That's not easy.
Yeah, it's recognize that you hold nothing sacred but our core values.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always kind of ask these questions as a $10 million business, what would you go back and say to a $3 million business? And I think there's so many things, right? There's a paradox, because when you're a $3 million business, you have few enough guys where if you want to implement change, it can be done very quickly. Right. You can survive and even thrive in that run and gun kind of mindset, because it doesn't take as much to turn that ship. You have fewer guys. And the paradox is, as the bigger you get, the more guys you get, the more you need to have processes, the more you need to implement that change. But the harder it becomes.
Yes. Yeah.
I think if you could go back and talk to yourselves, I think one simple statement would be, become accustomed to change. Yeah. Basically set the precedent and tone for the team that change will continue happening. We'll never settle exactly on how this works, because as we change, as we grow, as we evolve, the process has to change. So I think since I've been here since 2021, talking strictly about the comms team that I work with, I wish I can go back and tell them at the beginning, nothing will stay exactly the same. We will continually have to change. And I think if you set that tone, I feel that it could be easier and easier to digest and work with for the team, because I think that we like predictability. We like to come in and know exactly what our work is going to look like, and we don't want every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, something to change.
Right.
So I think that's just something that I think you could tell a smaller business of hey, just get accustomed to things consistently changing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Will.
I was just gonna say like my brain works in analogies, I think, but I think it's a lot different in turning a boat the size of a speedboat than it is turning an aircraft carrier. The amount of things that you have to take into account when you're turning a speedboat, or like let's run with a fishing boat. This is very little things to consider when you're turning a fishing boat, but when you're turning an aircraft carrier, there's systems and processes and people, and you've got to take in. I've never driven an aircraft carrier, so I don't know all the systems. But we
imagine it to be very
based off what I've seen in the movies.
You guys are really big on ship analogies, and it's crept into how I speak now. It's like everything is some kind of a ship analogy.
Yeah,
Which is funny because we live in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're in a landlocked
Hey,
state.
we have a seaport. Thank you very much.
Oh, we do. We do.
got one.
Is it Catoosa?
It's a Catoosa, Mississippi River Delta.
Yeah.
Oh well, there you go.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
Yeah, we can get barges.
Yep, we can.
Not very many, and if it's a drought year, there are none.
There are none, but that's why trains were such a big thing. But like to the point is like
Should just switch
there's
our
just more.
analogies to
There's
trains.
more systems and processes. The bigger you get, the more processes you have to have because there's more variables to take into account. And so it's to your point, Bryce. Yes, getting used to change. But as you get used to change, the change comes in the form of, hey, we've got to implement some systems and processes in order to accommodate change at the rate and at the frequency that maybe we were doing in the past.
If we could go back to even just like 2018, us, whenever we were getting onboarded into Service Titan and things like that, I think what I would say is don't find the way that works for you. Do the thing the way they're asking you to do it.
Yeah.
Because Service Titan, like in business, there's 1,000 different ways to do the same thing. And even with any software, Service Titan is just the one I'm going to pick on because that's the one we're most familiar with. But any CRM, you go look at the reviews, you go talk to any contractor using it. Like, I don't know, like I bet they have the same approval rating as presidents, frankly. I bet it's 40 and 50%, and that's a good year. Like, we're making it. if we've only managed to piss off half our customers, we're okay. But going back to 2018, if I could go back and coach us and tell us at that time where we were $4.5 million is do the thing the right way that they're asking you to do it, because this is built off of the backs of the top of the industry. The Service Titan looked at the top 5 to 6% of all companies out there, and then standardized their process to, okay, how can we find the middle ground between how these big dogs are doing it? So if we could go back and have that conversation, do the thing the right way, do the way that they're asking you to do it. And even if it's stupid, even if you're like, well, there's a faster way to do it, that faster way then creates more gum in the system that will clog up the pipes down the road and make it to where, well, crap, now we've got to go back and reestablish our membership base. Okay, well, now we have to go back and reestablish our price book rules. And the fast way is not the easy way. The way to sustainable growth, the way to making sure that we have what we need. Now, if we would have done that then, there are so many headaches that we would have avoided now. We would have mitigated so many problems. Yeah. So, well, we can't go back. But now having the conversation with ourselves of we need to do the thing the right way. But because we're now used to being a band of pirates, back to another ship analogy, we're used to operating as such. And now we're asking that pirate crew to become a navy. And we're met with a saber rattling.
So
I don't like wearing standardized jackets, Tugger.
So here's an interesting comparison. All right, so we talked about it on the podcast before, but we know that AC repairs or people investing in their homes hit an all-time high in the spring and summertime of like 2021. Right, this is like it's still COVID time. Okay. People are highly interested in working on their homes. They're all working from home. To kind of compare that to, can you not move that? Sorry.
You just changed the whole editing process.
Sorry.
I'm not cutting anything, so it's just like it's going to look weird.
He still kind of has a little bit of a glare, so I was trying to fix it.
It's okay. We're 30 minutes in, so.
I was about to say, we're too deep now, buddy.
I did.
Perfectionist who's a creative.
Sure.
So.
We're 23 minutes in.
Yeah. So here, juxtaposing, okay, 2 different time frames, right? Okay, I think in COVID, or rather like 2021, a lot of companies like Yarbrough and Sons kind of got pulled forward, right? Got yanked. Like the demand was an all-time high. So regardless if you were ready, regardless if you had processes in place, the demand was so high that you were going to be a success if you just showed up every day and opened shop and said, yeah, I got X amount of technicians. I got this much capacity and availability. Let's make it happen. And a lot of companies benefited from that time. What happened is that growth happened, but the processes had to catch up later. Right now, dealing with the AC shipment cliff, economic pressures, we're not sure what 2025 exactly is going to look like, but it's an interesting comparison because demand is relatively lower, but this is still driving us to work on those processes. And so I'm bringing that to the point here because we have to drive a better efficiency. If times are going to get tough, we have to have an answer for those questions. We have to have the ability to maneuver in a tough economic climate. And I think that's why we are nailing down on these processes as much as we are. So I kind of wanted to bring that up. 2021 to now is it's a different era.
Yeah.
It's been long enough that, you know, for the first 3 years after COVID, it felt like it was still like COVID time. It just felt like we were in a blur. I finally feel like I'm out of that.
Yeah.
I'm out of the COVID haze, and here we are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm putting it this way. What are you guys kind of projecting in terms of like how you're going to maneuver this year? You know, if it's looking at these doomsday scenarios, like if our marketing efficiency goes out the window, if new gen lead or if new customer gen just goes out the window, if your closing rate takes a dive, what exactly are your thoughts on that right now for 2025? How are you going to maneuver?
So I think the thing that we have been pounding the drum on is it's kind of the theme of this podcast, but it's efficiencies. And what does that actually mean? For us right now, that means the answer cannot be more bodies. It can't be throwing more bodies at the same problem to remain the same size, hiring people for the sake of filling the hole, filling the gap. So we have to look for means in which to make our team more efficient and effective. So whether that's creating the process that they can all follow, building, I said hiring, but adopting new systems for them to use, basically looking for means to which we can scale the team we have to a new level. So it is grabbing hold of the fact that whenever we're looking for efficiency, it is not a new tool. It's not a new software. It's not this, there's no like turnkey solution, but rather it's working with our team and pounding home that the answer to success, sustained success, and the vision that we've said to everybody that we've hired for the last 4 or 5 years, which is our goal is for everybody to make more money and everybody to have more time off. How we do that is build a bigger ship. The answer has to be efficiency. We have to increase revenue per coworker. We have to increase revenue per employee, and we have to make sure that we're doing so profitably at scale.
Yeah. And the ship can't just be bigger; it has to be more efficient.
Yeah.
Well, and the way you do that is nailing down and doing a process consistently. Because if you're constantly changing, there's no control. There's no and by control I mean you've not got no baseline by which to judge the success of anything that you're doing. You know, so it's nailing down those processes, nailing down it comes down to something simple like how do you greet a customer whenever you come to their house? You know, how are you positioning yourself within the home? And I don't mean like the physical space, it can't go down to that, but just the way that you're offering solutions. You know, are you offering solutions? You know, those are the things that it's like, okay, hey, there's not a software ad that's going to do that. There's not adding more people doesn't solve that problem. It's are you doing those things that the industry has said, hey, these lead to success. Are you doing the most successful practices well? You know, so I think about like football too, because it's like, yeah, okay, tackle that guy. Well, there's like, all right, I mean, the tackle can look really ugly, you know, but there's a best way to do that. You know, there's a standardized procedure by which you can tackle someone in football that generates the most success. And it's the same way in any industry, HVAC or wherever you go. You know, there's standardized practices that set you up for success the best.
I think in the same vein of like where you're talking, you know, I think we're just, we use ships a lot, but I think just metaphors and analogies in general.
My brain lives there.
Yeah. But the blocking and tackling is from the time you're in Pee Wee football to the time you're in the NFL. Blocking and tackling is something that is practiced every day. And
at every level.
John Wooden he legendary basketball coach. One of the things that he talked about, and I said this to our team the other day, which is don't get bored, don't get complacent with the monotony of success. That success most of the time, good success, mind you, is unremarkable. Success most of the time is mundane. It's monotonous. It's the small things every day that compounds to where one of these days you wake up and you're a 45-year-old overnight success, even though you've been pounding away on it for 25 years. That's what success is, where what we want, because of the social media world and landscape that we live in, it's a flip of a switch.
Yeah.
It's night to day. It's an immediate response. And so we're all constantly looking, and using the royal we, we're constantly looking for this tool or this new tactic or this whatever. But yet you look across the home service industry, some of the best and biggest home service companies out there are still running on paper. They're still running on the way that things had been going because they didn't get bored and lost in the monotony of success. That you can't outsmart simple, and it should be unremarkable, because if it's unremarkable, it's the frog in the pot with boiling water. It's like if you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, they're gonna freak out, and they're gonna know that it's happening. But whereas if you put a frog in normal water, and put the pot over the fire, the frog doesn't know what's happening, but yet the water around it's starting to boil. In the same way, I think that's what the success curve can look like if we don't get bored with the monotony of it. That it's just the small, unremarkable things done well every day.
Yeah, and I'm going to speak just on the marketing side, because I think that marketing is one of those things, especially like when we're in podcasts or in conversations. Marketing is like one of the most interesting things you could talk about, because you always feel like there's some kind of hack. There's some kind of tactic that you can learn right now to implement, and it'll work for your team. And there are things like that. And I think that's why you deal with like new shiny object syndrome or whatever for marketing, is because there's always something that someone's selling you. Alan Dibb, it's the book behind Will, but it's Alan Dibb wrote this book. He's an Aussie who wrote the book Lean Marketing. And
fantastic.
One of the best things he said in that book is, might be paraphrasing, but do the common thing uncommonly well. And it was about that time, before I read the book, it was like fourth quarter 2024, I was really just getting nailed into my process where everything just started feeling boring. And it was just like, okay, I have a system, and it's a lot of work. I just have to do all of it every day, and we will have a great marketing machine. And it will run, fluidly. But you get to a point where it gets boring and it's not fun. It turns out work is work. And so you have to show up. You have to do the boring thing every day. So my mantra for 2025 is make marketing boring again. I think we need to go back to our roots of what marketing is. The function of marketing here is to fulfill the available capacity for all of our technicians. Keep the guys busy. Keep the schedule absolutely busy by any means necessary with the budget that I've been allocated to do with.
So yesterday we spent some time down in Texas with a fellow contractor, Infinity Texas Air Trapper, and his team.
Thanks, Trapper and team.
We're not going to discuss what we talked about down there, because that is top secret classified information. But no, one of the things that his GM said, though, that really stuck with me was he was talking about just innovation, that a lot of times in the home service industry, we're looking for innovation. And he said, but a lot of times people are looking at innovation as to add. It's adding this process or adding this experience or adding this step. And he said, what really needs to happen is people need to think differently, and innovation can be simply not doing something that everyone else deems necessary to do. And so you can subtract a step in the equation and be innovative. You're now pioneering a whole new path by just cutting out a step in the process. So innovation, I think it's the change game that John and Vicky LaPlante always make everybody play. Is what they'll do is, and I suggest doing this with your team because it's humorous to make people do it. But you partner up, you go back to back, and you start the first round. You say, all right, I want you to make 2 changes to your appearance. Well, what do? Well, you grab somebody else's glasses, you put them on your face. You grab somebody else's hat, and put it on your face. And so then you say, okay, well, now identify the 2 changes. Obviously, you do it. The next one, and it scales. So it's like, next round, we're going to go back to back, and you got to make 4 more changes. And then, so then you're taking your belt off and wearing it as a bandolier, and somebody else is taking a shoe off. And so now you've taken your shoes off, and eventually what happens is once you get to a place where you've asked so many changes to occur, there's only so many clothes you can take off. The one rule of the game is you can't get naked.
It's a good rule.
But the default is a lot of times people are they're stripping, they're shucking clothing, they're, those are the changes that they're making, as opposed to looking for the solution of like, well, there's a different way to do this. I could just, wear my belt as a bandolier as opposed to taking it off. I can put my shoe on my hand as opposed to just taking my shoe off, and making those changes in the change game occur. And the way that their parabolic game ends is it's like, all right, everybody, go back to your seats, make it happen. And they don't say return to how you looked. So that's the key, the kicker of the game. They don't say get put back together. They just say, all right, everybody return to your seats, we'll get started. Well, everybody, what do? They immediately go back to how they looked in the first place. And of course you're going to. You're in a public setting. Like, you're going to go back to how you looked. But
There's certain common etiquette rules.
But the parable there is like, the minute that the game was over, everyone returned to their normal stasis. And that can't be what we do with change. Change has to be final. It has to be total. It has to be in a constant state of here's the new norm. Mm-hmm. And then if somebody's going to return to a level, it's going to be returning to that new standardized practice, as opposed to returning to the way they were before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of changes and things that we're trying, so I know I just talked about new shiny object syndrome with marketing, but we have been, I wanted to open this up with Tuck, but Tucker and I, in our marketing department here at Yarbrough, have been trying out some new tactics here. And I call them tactics because they're typically short-term rather than long-term. Strategy is long-term. Tactic is short-term. We are doing free tune-ups. And there's a lot of, on my end, I feel a lot of pressure. Because we're achieving a lot of work. We're achieving a lot of leads by offering free tune-ups to our customers. But the obvious trade-off there is that you do indeed get terrible leads. And so you're looking for those diamonds in the rough, and it becomes a numbers game. It becomes about keeping the schedule packed and our technicians busy, but giving them more at-bats and giving them more opportunities in the slowest, most costly time of the year for us to generate leads. So in a win, we have driven down our cost per, our CAC, our customer acquisition cost has gone down. From like upwards of $375 to now like $115.
Yeah, and that's in real. That's in both spend and labor cost.
Yeah.
To go do the job.
So you're factoring everything in there because it's free. So it's been kind of neat because we've circumvented a lot of the marketing funnel by doing this, but you pay a little bit of a price. Tucker, what's your take on the free tune-up so far?
So the way that we sat down and did the math, and the math kind of breaks our brain, and again, right, wrong, indifferent, left, center, it doesn't matter. It's too early to call this a success. What it is successful at is filling the board, and that is the function of marketing, is filling the board. Conversion is the tech and the sales team's job. Mm-hmm. Marketing. So from a marketing standpoint, filling the board has been successful, but the math behind it is, we looked at what are we spending on acquiring a new customer, which is typically around $375 or so, and that's a ton of money to acquire a new customer. Mm-hmm. And so really what we did is we took a page out of Alex Hormozy's book, which is, give somebody an offer so generous, so large that they feel stupid saying no. And for us, that's a tune-up or a membership, one of the two. We're giving both out like hotcakes. Tune in live to our Facebook if you want to on Fridays, and we are giving stuff away.
Oh yeah, that's been a whole other thing. On top of this is just doing Facebook Lives.
Yeah.
It's been really weird.
It's giving away things that are high value, where a licensed, insured, certified technician is coming out to your house to perform a tune-up. Is it free? Absolutely, it is free. But our techs are told, hey, you build the menu. You show them everything that you have found. Walk through. Just because you're presenting the steak at the restaurant doesn't make you the bad guy. They can choose not to take anything, or they can choose to make a repair. And so what we looked at was real cost of sending a technician out to a home versus cost to acquire a customer. And if through all of our other marketing leads like Google or Hulu or whatever, it was $375. So we looked at, well, how many people can we get in front of on Facebook for $500? And it's tens of thousands. I mean, probably in the upwards of like near 100,000 people is what you can get.
Well, I mean, in the township of Blanchard, which we have like about 11,000 people who live here.
Oh gosh, I forgot about this stat.
So here's what's interesting. All right, a quick scope here. We did this in 4 different cities. Our HQ is down here in Blanchard. We have a small town, but we put a 1 mile radius in 4 different cities. And in our city, the cost to acquire a new customer is about like $14. It's been a huge success. $500 generated to date about upwards of 35 leads. These are people who submitted their information for us to follow up with. That's their email, their full name, their street address, things that we needed to make sure that they were a serious customer and that we could do the job for them. $15 per customer. And then in other cities where we have less brand familiarity, less brand awareness, but a higher population at that, the cost to acquire was upwards of $35. And so that was really interesting. So you're seeing in real time how your brand familiarity impacts that area, because here it's an easy game for us to play.
So whenever we blended it out and see, okay, we can acquire a lead through Facebook for a free tune-up for, let's say, blended $20. Now what we have is we have a ton of room, a ton of value and runway to get to that 375 mark. And we want to be below 375. We want to be, what's the goal this year, 275?
Yeah.
So we want to be around 275 on our customer acquisition cost. But now we can go out and do a free tune-up. Heck, we could almost give away a free membership and still come in below the customer acquisition cost that we were achieving last year. And that was an industry thing. Service Nation Alliance, they put out everybody's numbers as far as what the customer acquisition cost was seeing. And it was floating between 350 and 400 is what they saw all of last year. So we were bang on in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And so any way that we can to circumvent the marketing game and acquire customers, but it's uncomfortable. It's doing the thing that talk about, the innovations, doing the thing that nobody else will, as opposed to paying the news stations, the TV stations, Hulu, paying all these big ticket items for marketing. Well, what if we just passed along that cost to our customer? If we just if we pass along the savings of what would have been the cost to our customer. So now we're able to go do a tune-up for free, or we're able to go do a maintenance for free. And we've filled the funnel to a point where, okay, we know that this can acquire leads. Now we need to work on the conversion side. The numbers haven't been working out in our favor, but like Bryce said, we know that the lead quality is going to be poor. However, I mean, on top of that though, I don't want to say it's poor, because like Jacob sold a system out of it. Kolby, I think, has one on the hook, and Will has one lead scheduled for this next week, all from the free tune-up campaign. So let's say we bat 1,000 and get all 3 of those. Well, now this minuscule spend, if everybody's average ticket is right around that 15 mark, we're talking $45,000 of rev gen on $2,000 of spend.
Well, and at the end of the day, here's what bottom line, you are generating a lot of new customers. Last January, 2024, we had a record high month for new customer gen. Again, this is like our worst month of the year, should be. February is typically our worst. January is like right behind it. And we had a record high about, a good spike in new customers. And this month, this year, I'm actually beating that record. Yeah. And so you're kind of having a discrepancy right now because the dust hasn't settled. We're still, as recording this right now, we're still at the end of January. Revenue, could keep pace, but new customer gen's very high. What we need to follow after that is revenue. And so we're going to see that in real time. But
all right. So if we were not doing this new tactic of doing the free service, what would our board look like?
Oh, it would be pretty rough because call volume is in the toilet.
Yeah,
what would that do for our technicians?
We'd be sitting at home, or we'd be sweeping the shop and painting fence.
So you got to ask yourself this question: do you, regardless of lead quality, do you generate these opportunities? Do you get your guys out in the field making an impression at bare minimum, leaving a tangible impression on a brand new customer? This isn't a billboard impression. This isn't a website impression. This is a technician coming over, wearing booties, being polite, offering you a service for free, diagnosing everything, and then presenting it to the customer. That is the most tangible branding effort you could possibly have. So that's a very optimistic view coming from the marketing director. But at the bare minimum, you are getting a great branding impression.
And we've seen that. We've generated a bunch of 5-star reviews from it already.
Yeah, because I think about maybe the contractor that's listening to this and be like, you're giving away something that I could charge for.
Yep. Because the most expensive, I think in the trades, the most expensive thing we have to sell is labor. But the flip side of that is also true. The most expensive thing we have to acquire is also labor. So we need to do everything we can to make sure that that labor capacity is full, that our team is getting full paychecks, that they are taken care of, and that they know that, hey, we're secure, we're safe, we have a home, like company's doing great, we're going to continue to perpetuate. So as opposed to having the, what I guess could be a cost saving measure of sending guys home, if we can go do free tune-ups and create 5-star experiences with new customers who've never used this before, even if we don't generate any revenue from it, oh my gosh, if we can get 5-10 5-star reviews out of the deal, which we have so far, that's worth its weight in gold. Because I think I read somewhere, again, somewhere is a very vague place, but I read somewhere it was like a 5-star review is worth like $5,000 to a company.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's like in long-term LTV.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so right there, it will pay itself back because of the increase in volume of 5-star reviews.
Bring this full circle back to efficiencies, talking about like that pressure that we work with. Running a free tune-up campaign, there's a lot of pressure involved. I want to say to any company who's listening to this, the only reason we're operating with confidence on this campaign right now is because we are dialed in with our communications team. We are dialed in. I'm scraping through my list of leads every single day, multiple times, and I'm following up on people. I'm ensuring that our booking rate is hitting the mark, the highest mark I can hit. I believe our service managers are ensuring that the technicians are taking this as seriously as they can. So I wouldn't pitch this campaign frivolously to a company who is not dialed in operationally for your communications team or your service technicians.
If you want to find out where you need to improve, it's a very good measuring stick to say.
You'll find the same thing that we did.
You'll find the same thing that we did. Because
we need to do better at presenting.
Yes, and I think we've done a very similar something.
We've done low-cost tune-ups.
We've done low-cost tune-ups before. And we found, the first time we did it, it was not successful. The second time we did it, we were in a much better shape as far as our processes were concerned. And so the result of that is we had way more success.
Yeah, I think so. Flipping the coin to you guys, so we've talked about the marketing funnel and all that. To a salesperson who may be hitting a cold streak, or they're seeing the closing rate go down, or the average ticket go down. What ways, let's say for you guys, if through the course of the first quarter, first quarter and a half, we're seeing average tickets, fall or closing rate fall, what ways, are you guys prepared to either, pull the ripcord, adjust, adapt? What does that look like in y'all's seat?
I had a estimate this past week, and it was I've had a series of estimates that were just ductwork, no equipment, just ductwork.
That's odd.
Yeah. So, anyway,
It's a real bummer.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
It's an odd duck.
So, so
Boo.
something, those are lower ticket
Yeah.
averages and stuff. But one of the things that I've been doing is just pushing is not the right word. I've just been offering
You're making a
and
suggestion.
emphasizing indoor air quality a lot more.
Yeah.
And so it's packaging stuff together to where it's not just ductwork, it's ductwork and this, and then trying to create that sort of value for the customer that is like, oh, hey, they're not just fixing this, but while they're here, they're also giving me, I'm getting an ionizer, and I'm getting a, some sort of maybe like a little bit of an extended warranty on the deal, or something like that. And so I think that's a easy way to mitigate the maybe lower ticket months or calls is to package stuff together.
Yeah. I think oftentimes, sometimes the problem that the homeowner communicates to you is not always is there's other things that are going on. And so their perception, how they perceive why their system's not doing what it needs to do, they'll call you for a solution that they believe is the correct one. And so it's having an open hand and being able to have that hard conversation with the homeowner, or a more simple conversation with the homeowner, being honest. Because there was a call that I went on last week where it was just ductwork. She had some airflow problems. Her ductwork was in great shape, but at some point, I don't know if it's a homeowner or another company had put zip ties on the ductwork, choking them down. And so I was like, well, every room that you've complained about has zip ties choking the airflow down. I don't know if ductwork I don't know if new ductwork would solve your problem. I think we could just cut the zip ties, which is a hard conversation for me, because I'm like, sure, would love to sell her new ductwork, but she didn't need it.
Yeah.
And so, but having that conversation with the homeowner, and she's like, well, I was like, the fix for that, instead of zip ties, is we can install dampers on the plenum. And that where we could adjust airflow from there, and you're not having to put zip ties.
I feel like zip ties were probably like the Mark I damper. It was like somebody trying to make a damper. They didn't quite know how to do it, and they're like, what, this will work.
Yeah, this will work.
Yeah, someone bought an entry level damper, and there's some sort of technician up there going,
zip tie was the first Iron Man suit. Is what it was.
Yeah, and so it was Mark I of the damper. Anyways, and so is being willing to have conversations with homeowners like, hey, the problem that the solution that you've asked me to bring to the table is not the solution that you actually need. Your ductwork is in great shape. Yeah. I think we can install we can improve the airflow control to rooms by installing some dampers on the plenums, and then probably cutting the zip ties. That'd probably be a good idea. And being willing to have that conversation and kind of adjusting on the fly, like what is the customer asking me for, and what they're asking for, does that solve the problem? Another great example was there was a call where we had where the homeowner was wanting transfer grills above the doors to help fix a problem, and I was sent pictures and whatnot. Her real problem was that she was shy on return air by about 600 CFM, and her thermostat. The rooms that she was trying to control, her thermostat was on the complete opposite side of the house, and so we're sitting there talking. I was like, hey, here's kind of the game plan. I do transfer grills. We'll do that. But we also need to increase return air. So we increase return air. And then the enhancement from that is to we'll do a new thermostat with sensors that will average out between the rooms that you really want to be nice and comfortable. Yeah. And and that ended up being, it went from, at the time, technician wasn't thinking that we're going to sell anything for that. It ended up being about a $3,000 ticket. And so just from a phone call.
And I think the thing that both of you kind of have highlighted, which is, I said it earlier in the podcast, is recognizing that the only thing we hold sacred is our core values, is our core virtues. And number one on our board out there is that we will always do right by the customer. Mm-hmm. That is number one. And so it's, when Will's talking about packaging, IAQ products and things like that, whenever we are, a lot of those times, a lot of conversations with, if it's just ductwork, they're expecting potentially like a higher ticket of, than what maybe we're coming to the table with, mm-hmm. but we can achieve the ductwork, the remediation of ductwork, mm-hmm. alongside throwing in some indoor air quality products that we believe in. It's not mm-hmm. just a matter of like, oh well, yeah, this will increase the ticket. Mm-hmm. No, like all of us have hospital grade filtration and ionizers mm-hmm. in our own houses and have watched the benefit of them in our own homes. Mm-hmm. And so we have to operate in such a way that the only thing we hold sacred is those core values, those core virtues, that everything else is subject to change. Like we could have sold a new duct system to zip tie home, but as opposed to that, it's like, well, we can go cut the zip ties and I think that'll achieve your end goal here. Yeah. But also we could install some dampers, and if you want more flexible control of where air is going, we can install dampers right here at the plenum. Mm-hmm. And so it's looking for the balance of what the customer needs are, what the company need is, mm-hmm. and how can we achieve that middle ground.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those conversations happen a ton where it's like you go out to the house and the homeowner thinks it's this, and it's like the solution is more expensive than what they're anticipating. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, and being willing to have that conversation with the homeowner, saying, hey, like this system has been neglected in some way, shape, or form for a very long time since it was installed. Mm-hmm. This is the original, and if you want different results, we're going to have to do some different things to get this thing to work right. And so and having that conversation, being willing to have that conversation with the homeowner, and being as transparent with the homeowner as possible, and give them the cards. Say, hey, here are my suggestions. Here's what we can do to make the system right, to get you what you want, and what you want to pay for is a totally different deal. And then they'll make that decision. And so
just presenting options.
Yeah.
Guys, before we wrap up this morning, I wanted to throw out a little Hail Mary question here for you guys. It's the beginning of the year. What are some goals that you have?
Oh, you beat me to it. That's exactly where I was going to go, in the exact same way.
That's what I was going to say.
So tell me a little bit. What are some of your goals? It could be business, could be personal, could be I know this time last year we actually talked about a bunch of books that we read. So you can go a lot of directions.
Nerds.
So
Books.
you know what? I'll let Will take us.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
Putting you
boy.
on the spot. What
I
do you
know,
got?
Right. Yeah. I think my goals this year are. We've kind of already touched on it, but just like nailing down those processes. There's some things that we were talking to our friends down in Texas yesterday, and just even the way that they word some of the way that they word some of their interactions with the customer. I think I was like, that's such a good idea. That's a great way to say that. And so I want to adopt and adapt some of those best practices into my own process. And so, I don't have like a super specific example to like give right now. But I think those are some things that I want to really nail down this year, is to get my process down, get my craft really honed in, to where I'm setting myself up and setting the techs up for the biggest chance of success that we can have. So that's one of the things on my list.
Kolby, what do you got? I gave you a lot of time to think about it.
A lot of where my head has been implementing the sales process within Service Titan.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest goal for me for the start of the year is to we're kind of to a place where we can operate out of Service Titan and be able to sell out of Service Titan. And so kind of my dream for this year is to make operating the sales side out of Service Titan so easy that it's scalable, and just keeping it and just make it fun, make it easy.
Make the thing we want the easiest path.
Make the thing we want the easiest path, because whenever it's easy to do,
That's how it gets done.
it's how it's get done.
You're going to follow the path of least resistance.
Yeah. And so I think
People are electricity and water. We will follow the path of least resistance.
Yeah. And so I think in my processes, and just from what I've learned from tinkering and building a somewhat of a sales process for new salesmen to follow, is what you make simple gets done. And this is true for whenever you're communicating with a homeowner too, is difficult things explained simply is easily understood. And so I think having our team be able to communicate in that way, and communicate things in a simple way, is going to be easily understood within our business, and then internally and externally. And so,
intelligence, intelligence, wisdom, expertise, all of that is absolutely bottlenecked by your ability to communicate.
You're next, pal. Bryce, what are your...
So when I was asking you guys the questions, I was like, this is perfect because I don't have to ask myself the question. Simple question. I think it's the same thing I'm driving every single year. I want to drive a marketing efficiency that's just unheard of.
Yeah.
I'm implementing more of these tactics. I'm getting our comms team to operate with a higher level of efficiency. Marketing plays so much into logistics that you can't ignore it. You can't do one without the other. So I think for me, the goal is driving a higher level of efficiency just for the marketing department as a whole. And that's a very easy blanket statement thing to say, but in real time, I'm working very hard on that. And so I think for this year, I said it the other day to Tucker, I think I always have to believe this, but 2025 is going to be my best year. And so as I run the marketing department, I have to believe that this will be the best, most effective, most impactful, successful year for Yarbrough & Sons marketing.
I think for me, it's be more intentional about celebrating our team. Be more intentional about spending time with our team. From the operation level, it's easy to get to a place where all you're asking of your team is to do, and adopt and change, as opposed to spending the time cultivating those relationships of, hey, here is the vulnerability that I have to offer. Here is the place where we can find common ground and spend time celebrating with our team and celebrating our team. So that was a personal New Year's resolution for me was I ask a lot of people for reviews for Yarbrough & Sons, but I didn't leave many reviews myself. And so now pretty much anytime I'm going into a business, I'm leaving a review and mentioning the person's name that I had the pleasure of interacting with, because it makes a huge difference. In the Facebook Lives, one of the things that I have said to end every Facebook Live, and it's like, it's humorous, the more you say something, the more it becomes ingrained in like who you are and like your core belief system, which is one of the things that I like am firmly in belief on, is the one thing people don't hear enough is their name in a positive light. So any chance we get to do that, we need to be seeking that out, because if it makes our day, it will make someone else's day. And I think, for me, I appreciate like words of affirmation for me personally, but I like that's not a ticker for me. But just because it isn't a big deal to me doesn't mean it's not a big deal to someone else. And you're not going to know unless you make the effort, extend that grace, extend that effort to someone else in such a way that, hey, this can then be reciprocated. So I think the biggest goal for me this year is we've been in systems creation hell. We are still going to be in system creation hell. We are that there. I don't know that tunnel ends. Talking to some of the big guys in the industry, I don't think that ends. You just have new problems. You solve a problem and then you find a new one. There is no to any contractors out there. There is no utopia. You don't make it. You just find new problems.
You're constantly Jack Sparrow and finding out why people are blowing holes in your ship.
Yeah. And so I think you have to. I've given it kind of this title of, we're really good at zooming in on the big pile of suck. This year, the big pile of suck is still going to be there, and we're still going to be chipping away at it. I think too often my natural state, because I get fixated, is to pull people into the big pile of suck with me and be like, don't you see why this isn't working? And it's like, as opposed to like, hey man, we're doing great. Like, look at how far we've actually come.
It's a much more pleasant conversation.
Yeah. And so I like the Oreo sandwich, I like the compliment sandwich. And so, but this year is be more intentional with celebrating our team, and celebrating just the little wins. It's like texting a guy when they get a good 5-star review. Texting somebody when they sell something great, when they have, great customer feedback or great customer experience. In the world of common, be the uncommon boss who's willing to say like, dude, great job for this. And it could be, hey, great job. Heard one of your customers say you were wearing shoe covers.
Yeah.
Celebrate the most common, most smallest portion of the process. Find ways to celebrate. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, we were talking about this on the way back from Texas yesterday. And I think all of us were kind of like, yeah, that's something that we definitely want to get better at. And I suck at that, because I'm the words of affirmation thing. It's like, yeah, it's nice to hear, but it's definitely not like, I wouldn't rank it as one of the highest things that really that makes me tick and moves me. But that doesn't mean it's not that for.
But I think it
else.
can be. That's the thing that I'm having to adopt is like, the more we do the thing, the bigger of a deal it becomes to us.
100%.
And so it's like to proclaim it's like, this isn't my thing. It's like, well, no, it can be. Like, you just have to adopt. Pull a Paul, be all things to all people.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a misnomer, because it's like, in you saying it's not my thing, and it's like, well, it doesn't affect me at all. I am a stone wall. But it's like, no, it's not. That's not something I would naturally rank.
It's not a part of it. Whenever you say that, it's not a part of your tradition of interactions.
Yeah.
And
well, team, I think that concludes today. So
It's a great podcast.
if you've been listening,
job, guys.
please like, subscribe, comment, shoot us a message, interact with us in some way, shape, or form. We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, we promise no answers, only responses. And as always, do something nice for somebody. You never know, it might change their life. Guys, let's get out of here. Let's have a great weekend.
Have a good.